Welcome back to the Lumios Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we're going to be talking about some of the stranger Paradox Pokemon. And I know that's kind of a weird thing to say because Paradox Pokemon are themselves just very, very strange Pokemon altogether. But even with that said, there's some Pokemon, 3 specifically, that really stand out amongst the other. These are Fluttermane, Screamtail, and Sandy Shocks. Now, the thing that stands out about these 3 Pokemon, what makes them so unique, is that when looking at all the other Paradox Pokemon, past or future, they all seem to be based on their final evolved counterparts. You know, Slitherwing is based off of Volcarona. You know, Iron Moth based off Volcarona. You know, not Larvesta, Volcarona. And yet, this isn't the case with these 3 Pokemon. They're based off of their pre-evolved counterparts, that is Mischievous, Jigglypuff, and Magneton, respectively, and this is just really strange, but there is a connection between these 3 Pokemon. You see, Mischievous, Jigglypuff, and Magneton all evolve via a stone. Now, Jigglypuff evolves via the Moonstone, Mischievous evolves via the Dusk Stone, and then Magneton, as of Gen, I believe it's 7? It might be 8, but either way, one of those gens, it began to evolve via the Thunderstone. So, that tells me that, you know, that's why these Pokemon are based off of these pre-evolved forms and not their evolved forms, is because the idea here is they're past Paradox Pokemon, right? So these Pokemon are from the distant past. So very likely, these Pokemon existed before these stones were around to influence their evolutionary line. So before Jigglypuff could ever become Wigglytuff. Now, this seems to imply something really interesting about the stones. It seems to imply that these stones, like I said, haven't always been here, and that they only came into play later down the road. Now, I think that these stones, and if not all evolutionary stones, at least these 3, the Thunder, Dusk, and Moon, seem to come from outer space. Now, the reason I think this is because it would line up with this. You know, these Pokemon existed on Earth that was untouched by the asteroid that would carry these meteorites, these pieces of meteorites rather. But then one day when it happens, that starts to change the environment. These Pokemon can now change based off of these stones. So, you know, it makes sense to me that they would come from a time before this asteroid ever hit. Now, interestingly enough, I think that these Pokemon specifically back this up. If you look at all 3 of these Pokemon's evolutions, they actually do seem to be very much tied to space. If you look at Magnezone, it seems to, like, be inspired by a flying saucer. You know, the very typical thing, the stereotypical alien spacecraft, right? That's what Magnezone is. And then you have Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff, I mean, it's right there in the name, the Moonstone. We can pretty easily assume just by the name that this rock did come from space, and this is further backed up by our knowledge of the Clefairy line, its ties to the Moonstone, how they seem to, like, worship the Moonstone, and they too did come from space. So, you know, we can assume that this Moonstone would also be able to alter Jigglypuff and give it a more extraterrestrial evolution. And now you may be going, okay, Jigglypuff, I see your point, the Moonstone, and yeah, Magnezone is a flying saucer, but what the heck does Mischievous have to do, or Mismagius rather, have to do with outer space? And I am very glad you asked that. You see, Mischievous, when it evolves into Mismagius, it starts to get more mage or witch-like features. You know, Mischievous is just your basic Banshee, and it's also based off of a Japanese yokai, but it doesn't really seem to have a ton of witch features going for it. But it dives full force into this when it evolves into Mismagius. It's got a witch hat, you know, it's got the little locks coming down. It looks like it's wearing, like, a robe. So, it's, I mean, it's in the name, too, Mismagius, you know, like mage. So, very clearly, Mismagius is inspired by witches and mages. Now, there actually is a lot of ties to the constellations in Magic. You know, the magic that is practiced by mages, the magic that is practiced by wizards and witches, all tend to be tied to the stars. You know, the stars are often used as a way to predict the future. You know, astrology is also kind of tied into this a little bit. Basically, constellations are very, very important to Magic. So it makes sense that Mischievous, when coming into contact with a stone that came from the stars, well, it would start to get more magical powers. It would start to be able to become one with the stars. So now it kind of can see the future and can, alternate reality a little bit. If you think about kind of the way that Mismagius messed with Ash and Dawn and Brock in their, dream space back in the episode in Diamond and Pearl. And I do want to point out that none of the other Paradox Pokemon, their modern-day counterparts, do not evolve via stones. All the other ones evolve through level up or don't evolve at all, or, some mean that is not stones, but only these Pokemon did. And the implication here would be that these Pokemon, if these stones, at least, I would think that this would mean all of them come from outer space, but I would think at least it means that the Thunderstone, the Duskstone, and the Moonstone come from outer space. So, by that logic, we can assume that any Pokemon that can evolve via a Duskstone, Moonstone, or Thunderstone didn't initially evolve, and that it's kind of an extraterrestrial reason that's able to evolve. You look at Nidorino and Nidorina, they evolve into Nidoking and Nidoqueen via Moonstone. Maybe the reason that they take this shape, as a Nidoran and Nidorino, they're grounded, they look more like animals, but then they start to get humanoid features when they evolve via the Moonstone. Maybe this is because it's like extraterrestrial DNA messing with them and just kind of morphing their body type completely. You also have Pokemon like Charjabug. Charjabug evolves via Thunderstone. So, is Vikavolt maybe also kind of inspired by alien spacecraft or something? I don't know, but it's a very, very interesting thought for sure. This would even mean things like Eevee is supposed to only naturally be able to evolve into Umbreon, Espeon, or Sylveon, but its evolutions of Jolteon, Flareon, Vaporeon, and now Leafeon and Glaceon are all unnatural. They're because these meteorites fell to Earth. I think that's so interesting. And then if you look at the Eevee line and you look at its evolutions, this would also kind of add some credit to that, because Eevee itself seems to be kind of tied to space, because looking at its natural evolutions, Espeon, Umbreon, and Sylveon, well, they kind of have ties to space too, with Sylveon's signature move being Moonblast, and it even kind of has an alien-like appearance to it. Umbreon is very heavily tied to the moon, and, can of course use things like Moonlight. Espeon, very heavily tied to the sun, and also is a Psychic-type Pokemon, so again, you can go back to that connection to the stars and constellations, all those kinds of things. It can learn Future Sight, as many Psychic types do. It's definitely an interesting thought. I'm not saying this has to be the case, but I do think that it is kind of Pokemon's theory or way of hinting at this theory that, maybe these evolutionary stones, they weren't always here, and they probably aren't even from here. But yeah, it's also crazy to think too, if we were to get more paradoxes, perhaps in DLC, or maybe even one day in future games, these paradoxes, if done for the Pikachu line, will probably be done for Pikachu, not Raichu. If done for Eevee, will probably be done for Eevee, not Jolteon, Vaporeon, or Flareon. That's just such an interesting thought. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this in the comments below. Also, let me know what you thought of these three Pokemon, because I remember at first being like, okay, why did they do Mischievous, Magneton, and Jigglypuff? Why not Wigglytuff, Magnezone, and Mismagius? But after this connection, I think it's pretty clear why. I really do believe that these Pokemon didn't always evolve this way. But yeah, again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss all of our future Pokemon videos. We do theories, we do speculation, we do just breakdown stuff. It's a lot of fun. You don't want to miss that, so like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And until next time, I will see all of you later.